Welcome back, everybody, to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. I hope you guys are all excited for today's subject for this budget deck tech. I know I am. It's a card that came out quite a while ago, but I was always fascinated by his abilities and never really saw a video discussing how to build him budget. It was all about the big, expensive, splashy spells that take advantage of keeping mana around. And so for this video, I was really inspired to keep it simple, keep it short, keep it budget. And yeah, as always, let's get into it. So today's commander that we're looking at is Omnath, Locus of All. He's a 5-color commander. So he's basically Wooburg, but the black mana is Phyrexian, so you could pay a black or 2 life. For a legendary creature, Phyrexian Elemental, 4/4, if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. Already, super cool ability. We love that. Cards like Crufix, God of Horizons, or Horizon Stone, anything like that. You know, Omnath, Locus of Mana, that sort of thing. Very cool ability. But also has, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you look at the top card of your library. You may reveal the card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, you add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it in your hand. So you essentially draw an extra card. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand anyway. So essentially, to boil all that down, is you are drawing an extra card no matter what. What you could do is, if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols, you reveal it and add 3 mana for free in any combination. So I'll explain that a little bit more when we get to an actual card that we can look at, but that ability is so sick. To get a free card and 3 mana to cast that card for free, just for free, is ridiculous. And then the fact that you're able to save up mana, right? It's just going to become black in your mana pool. Oh man, we've got some spicy cards we'll be able to take advantage of here. So let's get into it. The first kind of section here I want to talk about, again, these cards that have multiple colors, multiple colored pips that we'll be able to kind of create versatility out of. The first one is Villainous Wealth. So it's X, black, green, blue. For a sorcery, target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana costs. I love this card so much, and I have never found a deck where it really fits. It's kind of like a pirate deck. It's also kind of an X-Spell deck, but I feel like this is really a very good home. Because one, again, with Omnath's ability, if we flip it over and reveal it, because it has 3 colored mana pips in its mana cost, we can add 3 mana in any combination of colors. So we could add a black, green, blue, or we could add 3 black, or 3 green, or 3 blue, or 2 blue and a black, or 2 green and a blue. You know, versatility is amazing. Which then, since we have that mana now, we essentially have this card that we pay X and have this ability. So it discounts this card to the point where it's just stupidly broken, where we could easily pay 6, 7, 8 mana and cast 6 spells off a player's deck for free. It just is so cool. It's so cool. So I am very excited for this card in this deck. The next one is Debt to the Deathless. It's X and then 2 white and 2 black for sorcery. Each opponent loses 2 times X life, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. This is a ridiculous card, where if we, again, flip it off the top, get that 3 mana off right away, have that to pay for it, we're going to be able to drain people for a ton of life. 2 times X. So if we pay 5 into this, right? So X equals 5, we'll have to pay either a white or a black from our own mana, but then we have the 3 from Omnath. So we're paying 6 mana. Each opponent's going to lose 10 life, and we're going to gain 30 if, all 3 opponents are still alive. Like, what? For 6 mana? It's a ridiculous ratio. And so this is something, honestly, you kind of want to use this as the haymaker game ender. You want to take out at least one player with this, because if you don't, you automatically become the arch enemy, because you just canceled everybody's life total and took it and buffed up your own. The third one in this category here is Elsha of the Infinite. It's a 2 and then Jeskai for legendary creature Jin Monk. It's a 3/3 with prowess. We can look at the top card of our library anytime. Again, super helpful just to have the information for Omnath's ability. And then we can cast non-creature spells from the top of our library. And if we cast a spell from the top of our library, we can cast it as though it had flash. Love it. Love it. Especially with Omnath's ability of storing mana, where we can use that at any point on anybody's turn. That's going to be a super spicy combo. Where we're just going to be able to cast spells willy-nilly. It's going to be beautiful. The second category, I wanted to focus a little bit more about Omnath's mana storage ability, where if mana would empty from our pool, it becomes black instead. This is an ability that is hard to find in budget. Keeping mana through steps and phases is not very common, and when it does happen, it's usually on a creature or another permanent that is a bit very much out of our price range. But I did manage to find 2 cards that I think would be very helpful in this kind of a strategy. The first is Horizon Stone. It's 5 mana for an artifact. If you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. If you have both this and Omnath on the field, you can kind of choose which one you'd like. It doesn't matter, but it would be helpful, right, if Omnath gets removed, to still have Horizon Stone out there, so you're not just losing all that mana off the bat. So it's a redundant effect. I totally get that, but it's an excellent backup plan, and it's something we want to keep around. The second is less of we get to keep our mana and more of we get to punish other people for keeping mana, or for not keeping mana. Yurlok of Scorched Thrash is 1 black, red, green for a legendary creature Viashino Shaman. Maraschino Shaman. Has Vigilance, it's a 4/4. A player losing unspent mana causes that player to lose that much life. Love mana burn. When people lose mana from their mana pool, it's just going to tick them down. Now, for most people, that's, they're not going to add mana to their mana pool if they know this ability is on the stack or on the field, because they don't want to risk losing the life if they can't use it. And that's where the second ability comes in, where it's pay 1 and tap it. Each player adds black, red, green. Now, for us, that's great. It's mana ramp, really efficient mana ramp, honestly. And even if we don't use it, it just becomes black, right, with Omnath's ability. But if we activate this on our turn, each other player adds 3 mana to their mana pool, and if they don't have an instant that uses these colors, and to be honest, most instants are white and blue. So the fact that it's Jund is all the more advantage. They're all going to lose 3 life, just like that, right? So we ramp ourselves, we deal 3 damage to each opponent. That's a pretty spicy card. And then I really thought through what direction I wanted to take this deck, whether I wanted to be more permanent based or Spellslinger, and I think I leaned much more heavily on the Spellslinger side. You'll find that all of the creatures not all of them, most of the creatures in this deck either ramp you, right, just adding mana, or they have some sort of Spellslinger support, where they give you a benefit for playing some of these instants and sorceries that we're going to be playing. And in that category, the first one is Calamax the Stormsire. He's 1 a green, blue, red for a legendary creature elemental dinosaur, 4/4. Whenever you cast your first instant spell each turn, if Calamax the Stormsire is tapped, we can copy that spell. And whenever you copy an instant spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on Calamax. So, again, instant versus non-creature spell is a little bit more limited, but we have tons of instants in this deck. Not going to be a problem to cast 2 or so in a table rotation. So, if we get to copy those for free, I will take that. The next is Kess, Dissident Mage. It's 1 blue, black, red for a legendary creature human wizard, a 3/4 with flying. And during each of our turns, we can cast an instant or sorcery spell from our graveyard. And if a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, we exile it instead. So, yeah, it's great. We don't really have a whole lot of graveyard recursion outside of this. That's not really the theme of the deck. So just to have this on the battlefield, to be able to pull some of our higher powered cards out of the bin, very, very helpful. And then finally we've got Kaikar, Wind's Fury, 1 blue, red, white for a legendary creature bird wizard, 3/3 with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Great, token generation for doing things that we'd be doing anyway. And we can also sacrifice a spirit and add a red. So beautiful. If we don't really need those creature tokens at the moment, or if we're just like 1 mana short of casting our massive spell, yeah, we'll just add that red. And if we want to do it on someone's end step right before it gets to our turn, and we've got Omnath out, we just sack all our spirits, add 5 red mana, go to our turn, that mana goes to black instead, we still keep it around, and yeah, it'll just fuel our turn moving forward. So that brings us to the vegetable section of this deck tech. As always, budget decks need to eat your veggies. You have to have efficient ramp, card draw, and removal. Not just efficient, but effective and frequent, or else you're not going to be able to play this deck as consistently as you need to keep up with and compete with some of the higher powered decks out there that have access to cards that you just don't have access to. So in that first category of ramp, we've got Knotvine Mystic. It's red, green, and white for a creature elf druid 2/2. Pay 1, tap it to add a red, green, white. I love this not only because it's an efficient ratio, you pay 1 of any color and you get 3 mana, but the color variation here is helpful, right? It's not add 3 red or 3 white. It's allowing us to have some versatility in how we're adding this mana. And the second one is somewhat similar, except with an added ability. It's Cormella Glamour Thief. It's 1 a blue, black, red for a legendary creature vampire rogue. It's a 2/4 with haste. You pay 1, tap it, add blue, black, red. So basically the same thing. But you can only spend it to cast instant sorcery spells. So a little bit more limited. Again, most of our bombs are going to be instant sorceries, so it's not that limiting in this deck. I don't know why I would put it in if it was like a permanent based deck. It'd be kind of dumb, and I would hope one of you would point it out in the comments. But it also has, when Cormella dies, you return up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. So, great. Some graveyard recursion. As I mentioned, we don't have a ton of that, so this is going to be a very helpful addition. And yeah, it also has haste, which I kind of glossed over, but the fact that we'll be able to play it and then use it immediately if we need to kind of helps to pay for itself a little bit. And yeah, it'll be a very efficient, very helpful ramp piece here. And then finally, I love... This deck is really, for me, about the massive spells we can cast. So this might be a little cheap to include this in the ramp category, but I'll explain why I did. So it's Meeting of the Five. It's 3 in Wooburg, so it's an 8 mana spell for a sorcery. You exile the top 10 cards of your library, and we can cast spells with exactly 3 colors from among them this turn. And we add 10, basically double Wooburg, right? So 2 of each color, and spend this mana only to cast spells with exactly 3 colors. So you might have noticed, even with just the 2 cards that I mentioned before this, we have a lot of cards that are exactly 3 colors. We've got some bigger cards that are like that. We've got some smaller cards like that. But regardless, this is going to hit a bunch of stuff off the top. And I included it in the ramp category because, so ultimately, if you pay 8 and get 10, yes, it's ramp, but it's not really that efficient. And when are you just going to have 8 mana lying around to be able to cast this thing? Not often. But if we flip this off of Omnath and get to add 3 mana for free, then it becomes this ability for only 5 mana. And we get to choose to add the colors that maybe we don't have at the moment, right? If we're mana screwed, we don't have white or red, then when we flip this, we add white, red, and blue. And then we pay black and green from our own lands, and then 3 extra, and we get it anyway. So it's a way of having access to this card even if you don't have all the colors available to you. Yeah, I love the big splashy spells, and so this is something I'm very excited to be able to play. Moving on to the card draw section, we've got Whirlwind of Thought. It's 1 blue, red, white for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. We're going to be casting a lot of non-creature spells. We're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Invoke the Firemind is an X, 2 blue and a red for a sorcery. And we get to choose one. So either draw X cards, or Invoke the Firemind deals X damage to target creature or player. So some versatility here. I think most of the time, I'd prefer to flip this off the top with Omnath, add the 2 blue and a red, pay 4 or 5 mana, draw 5 cards, right? The efficiency there, the mana to card draw ratio is really good. So that's what I'm mostly going to use it for. But hey, it's the end of the game. Player's down to 6-7 life. You have enough mana for it. It just can turn into a win con here. So the versatility is very helpful. And then finally we've got Asperia Supreme Judge. 2 and 2 white and 2 blue for a legendary creature, Sphinx, 6/4 with flying. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you may draw a card. This is a card I tried to play in a different deck a couple years ago, and I just never felt like it pulled its weight because I was paying 6 mana for an effect that essentially does nothing on its own, right? Players have to attack you in order for you to have benefit here, and if they know you're going to be drawing cards, then they're going to be a little bit more judicious, pun intended, about swinging at you when you have the Supreme Judge. So it didn't really work in that deck. I think it'll be a better fit in this one, mainly because of the cost reduction, right? If we're able to shave this mana cost in half with Omnath's ability, then it becomes much more palatable. And again, in a Spellslinger deck, we're not going to have a ton of massive creatures out there, so having a little bit more protection, even if we don't get to draw the cards, if it inhibits opponents from attacking us, then I say it's a win-win. And then we move into the removal category. The first is Bedevil. It's 2 black and a red for an instant. Destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. Beautiful. We love the versatility here. Now 3 mana for that is a bit much, but again, flip it off the top with Omnath, it becomes free. So you'll notice that with a lot of the removal, it's a lot of 3 mana removal, which is not the most efficient, but the upside of being able to flip it off of Omnath is significant. Next is Deathbringer Liege. I loved including the lieges on this. First, because they care about colored creatures, which we're going to have a lot of. But second, because their mana costs are all hybrids, right? So this one is 2 and 3 Orzhov, so either white or black. And it's a way of giving us versatility in which colors we care about. So, if it was 2 and 3 white, then we could only add white. Or if it was 2 and 3 black, we could only add black. But because they're mixed, we can add whatever combination we want of those 2 colors, of course. But anyway, this is a creature horror, a 3/4. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1. Other black creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a white spell, you can tap a target creature. Not removal per se, but is helpful if you're trying to remove blockers, or if you're trying to make sure certain players can't attack you, that sort of thing. And then whenever you cast a black spell, we can destroy a creature if it's tapped. So that's where the removal part comes in, right? If creatures are tapped just because they've been attacking or we've tapped them down, then they're open to... Again, this is something we're going to be casting white and black spells anyway, so this is just incidentally being able to get this benefit. And then finally we've got Soul of Emancipation, which is 4 and a green, white, blue creature avatar. It's a 5/7. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. So this thing is a big boy. 7 mana for a 5/7 that destroys 3 non-land permanents. It's a lot. I'm, again, looking at this card through the lens of we're flipping it off the top with Omnath, we're discounting it by 3, so you're paying 4 to get a 5/7 on the battlefield and destroying the 3 most threatening non-land permanents. And again, permanents, so versatility there. Creatures, artifacts, enchantments, anything you want. Except lands, obviously, but we don't care about them. Yeah, it's a lot. This is a card that I went back and forth on, because I wasn't sure if even with the discount it was enough of a benefit, but paying 4 and destroying 3 is just an effect that, yeah, the possibility of that was something I couldn't pass up. And that brings us to the Thrift pick of this deck. Yeah, for those of you who have not watched the channel before, starting over. And that brings us to the Thrift pick of this deck. For those of you who have not seen a video on this channel before, the Thrift pick is a card that not necessarily do I believe it is the best card in this deck. Most of the time I do. But it's a card that I'm most excited to play. Right? This is the card that if I draw it or have it in the opening hand, I am psyched. And the Thrift pick for this deck is a card that I've already mentioned before. And if you would like, we can play a little game here where you can go back and try to guess which card I'm picking as my Thrift pick. And comment down below before you continue with this video, and I'll know that you're a true fan and a true subscriber, and you'll have my respect. So I think that's prize enough. And if you haven't done it already, then you're probably not going to do it. So without further ado, here we go. The Thrift pick for this deck is Villainous Wealth. So I mentioned this right at the beginning. It's X, black, green, blue for the sorcery. I'm so excited to play this card with this deck. I love being able to just cast things off of opponents' libraries. And again, the point of these budget decks, if you're playing opponents who have not budget decks, you could nab some wild stuff. Like cards you would never be able to play on your own. Yeah, the ability to have access to cards that you wouldn't normally be in your price range is just super fun. And to see the face of your opponent when you just start casting their great stuff for free, yeah, this is going to be a fun card to have in this deck. And that brings us to the end. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end of this video. I hope you took some inspiration for your own decks here. As always, you can check out the full deck list in the link in the description. And yeah, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Take some time, like, share, comment down below. And yeah, until next time, stay thrifty.